Hello there everyone, so welcome to a guide or overview basically of Elspeth von Draken of the Empire. As always, I played through the initial turns to get a feel for the faction. Now these are my conclusions, and in the end I'll share the armies that I would try for the faction. Now the little bit of a disclaimer as always, this is not an in-depth guide, just what I typically view before starting a campaign. So without further notice, let's start with Elspeth. So, for your short victory condition, you need to complete the Gunnery School Tier 2 and destroy the factions of Sylvania and the Fecundities. You will also need to occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. Achieving this, you'll get 3 hero capacity for all heroes, so it's great to ensure you always have enough heroes for scouts or for your armies, especially this early when you get this. Now, it's a nice short victory. It does require you to expand into different directions, but you should be able to do it, especially given your unique mechanics. Now, for the long victory condition, you have to achieve the short victory, occupy, loot, raise or sack 70 different settlements, and control all provinces of the Empire, directly or via vassals and allies. Now, achieving this will give you plus 10 hero recruit rank, which is great to have your heroes immediately be very effective, especially, of course, those that with benefits for your army or even the casters. Now, this is a nice long victory, easily achievable by Elspeth, who is definitely really well positioned for this goal. Actually, even better than Karl Franz, I would say. So, she has the power of Nuln, access to the Imperial Gunnery School, enabling access to unique unit upgrades and special units, research rate plus 10%, that's great actually, upkeep minus 15% for gunnery units, and double experience gain for artillery and gunnery units. So overall, it's a very nice set of buffs, completely focused on the powerful missile units of the Empire, which she benefits so much it is quite incredible. Climate. It's rather average to bad. Other than the Empire lands, having mountains as unpleasant does hinder future expansion into domination. And of course, either southern-focused domination or north-focused will always have issues with the amount of uninhabitable. It's not really the best faction to achieve a full map completion for sure, so when you try it, make sure that you account for it. That's basically the advice here. So your starting province is a 3-settlement province, and you are surrounded basically by friendly factions. Overall, you should have a very nice one-directional expansion, especially in the very early game towards the vampiric factions and greenskins nearby. Now, this seems very easy, and then you proceed against Vlad, for instance. It sounds very simple, but there is a catch. You have to be extremely careful where you expand to. If you take any of the mountain areas nearby, then you may trigger animosity towards the Wood Elves, because you'll become their neighbor. So, taking any forts as well, because you will likely trigger Ikit, Claw, or Scrag against you. Therefore, typical expansions to control the initial provinces, expand to the south here, take the fort, and be careful with Scrag, and then go against Vlad. Elspeth is also uniquely equipped to deal with him, so take the opportunity when it arrives, and just be careful with any enemy expanding close to your borders. Overall, you should have control of the southern part of the Empire, and then you can proceed towards your conquests. That should be the very initial goal overall. Therefore, defend on this area and make sure that you are defended on that northern area by Reichland or even yourself, and that should be fine. Diplomatically, well, you're part of the Order Tide. Very simple to obtain alliances with other Empire factions, Bretonia, Dwarves, and Kislev. Enemies will be vampires, chaos, greenskins, Skaven, wood elves. Be very careful with the expansion into the mountains, as it will trigger further enemies. And when dominating the Empire lands, you will likely trigger Norska and chaos to come after you. Now, as for outpost units, try to obtain certain flying units from Bretonia, some stronger infantry from the dwarves, and maybe some sleds and monsters from Kislev. And of course, get a couple of thunder badges while they're hot. Other possibilities will include Cathay, High Elves, but that is up to you to have later on. So Imperial authority has now been reworked. It is quite simple now. The more the Empire lands are under Empire ownership, the better for you. You should assist your friendly Empire nations or take their lands for yourself, and then you'll benefit from the nice buffs. Of course, if you allow the enemies to take too much, then you also have those debuffs in essence. It's a very simple, straightforward system, and I do like it now. In terms of another mechanic, you can also recruit Elector Count State troops. These are basically better versions of some of the typical units from the Empire. As Elspeth, you can obtain these units by researching first to unlock them. A special note should be given to the artillery-specific ones, including the siege tank one and the bordermen outriders grenade launchers, which have armor piercing. Now, specific to Elspeth, we have the Imperial Gunnery School, divided into Imperial Armory and Amethyst Armory. So, in essence, you use the currency, which is the schematics. You gain these via battles, mostly, and you can improve all your missile troops to become crazy good. And I do mean crazy. Lots of different aspects, like getting more rockets for the Hellstorm rocket batteries, which is always nice. And of course, you're always going to have a lot of schematics because you earn them via battles. Later, the Amethyst units are much better. This is unlocked on tier 3. So, improved versions of some of the missile units, they can even be further enhanced for the ultimate missile-based army, including having like amazing spell-like ammunition to destroy your enemies really with ease. Now, there's several different possibilities here that you can choose to go for, so I recommend that you check what possible effects are so that you can plan out your armies much better. So for instance, when you see here, you can even gain the purple eclipse, which is a massive bombardment. It's a nuke, literally, which is so great for this army to be able to use it. Now, the second specific mechanic for Elspeth is the Gardens of More. So you can build these, at least 5 locations that you can build only in the Empire, but it will allow you basically to have a teleporting system for Elspeth herself. I'll speak more about it in just a moment. But in essence, you can build up to 5 of these locations, and it works similarly to Undercities. You'll have the Undercity icon there, the Garden of More icon there, and then you have 1 out of 3 possibilities of buildings to build up there, so you can choose which buildings to add. I chose this one, for instance, because I did want another caster for the second army, but it's really up to you what you choose. Just make sure that you have a plan for it. That's always what I mention. Now, in terms of that other ability is that you can also teleport or fast travel Elspeth to the selected Garden of More, and that's perfect so that you can, for instance, travel long distances with her to protect the Empire. It's really cool to ensure your domination over the Empire lands. In terms of edicts, we have a control and income from trade. That's always excellent in case you're having any issues. Chance of a plague spreading in minus corruption. This is perfect on the neighboring provinces with feasters, for instance. Growth and construction cost. That's typically the one used in the early game. Recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity if you need units really fast. And then income from all buildings. That's typically used in late game. Then we have for stances channeling when you want more magic, and you should always want for 10% movement is great. And camp costing 50% movement rate, but enables replenishment and global recruitment, as well as immunity to attrition. Whenever you are in those pesky uninhabitable places, that's where you should use. Raiding as well gives you immunity to attrition, but no replenishment, mind you, and also costs 50%. And then you have ambush and forced march. Overall, a really balanced set of edicts and stances, allowing you to easily adapt to the circumstances of the campaign. I do recommend keeping an eye on your edicts at least every 2 turns to ensure you're maximizing the effects. So, Nuln has 2 specific buildings. The first one, Nuln Gunnery School. It does unlock the recruitment of the steam tank variation for Elector Count troops. It gives you recruitment rank and cost reduction for artillery, gun units, and also very nice the schematics gained per turn, so 100 per turn. Also the fact that it gives so much as a garrison, it kind of counts as a garrison, so make sure you don't build a garrison in Wissenland. In Nuln, it's not necessary. Then you have the Black Rose Chapter House. Let me see if I I can check the passive ability. Sometimes it allows me. Okay, so less upkeep for all the knight units, basically less recruitment cost, and then it allows you to recruit the Knights of the Black Rose and gives them this passive ability, which is really nice. So overall a good set of specific buildings. Then you have the military, which is much better now. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 military buildings with 3 that you can build in the minus settlements. So tier 3 units are now formidable, actually, including units from nearly all types of units. Only the demigryphs and the advanced artillery units are now tier 4 or 5, but you can do so much with just the tier units that it's so great to see. In specific, nearly every single building gives you a hero unit, which is also nice. So, of course, land ships and steam tanks are now really powerful and should aim to get those later on, but don't be afraid of doing a lot of stuff just with the tier 3 units. Now, in terms of infrastructure, the basic ones: growth, replenishment, income buildings, control and less upkeep for armies in the region. This is really important as well. And then I have a jack of all trades here with more campaign movement range and income from all buildings, as well as some recruitment bonuses. Really good, optimal, so that you can easily adapt to the needs of your empire. Research. It changed slightly. It still is what I love about the Empire, that you can choose the type of idea that you want to go for. Do you want to go and improve your missile units, which is quite thematic with Nuln here, with Elspeth, and you can also acquire just stuff for diplomacy or against typical enemies. Note the specific ones that you have, improving her mechanics under the Dark Lady of Nuln there. I'm showcasing here the enemies of the state now, but you also have a good one, which is the state troops. So this is how you can unlock most of those over here. Yep, state troops. Do note that it is costly, so make sure that you know what troops you want to unlock. Overall, I'll just recommend the steam tank variation and the ones with the bordermen, you know, the outriders, which are really cool. That's about it, really. So in terms of the Lord skills, you have the typical one. So Lord specific skills: red line for units, blue line for campaign. Elspeth has some nice abilities on her own, with the casting ability, of course. Blue line, you have upkeep reduction and casualty replenishment rate, as well, of course, as lightning strike in the late part of the line. So it's worth it to reach this part. In the first part, I'd like to take it less attrition. It's always something that I focus, or less corruption. It's really good when you focus those, and suddenly you don't have any problems with that, especially with your main armies. Now, in terms of the red line, has been reworked a bit. Now mostly has infantry in the same location, so that's good. And with the addition of the land ship and the new steam tanks, it's far more viable to go there for Mighty Forge. But of course, Imperial Gunnery is always a favorite among players. Strength of Hardship now has, as I was saying, the great swords. They used to be in Taste for Battle. But still, I think that is an improvement, because it makes them a little bit better in their task, you know, of holding the line while doing some damage. So I like that change. In terms of heroes, always make sure that you check what they actually benefit. For instance, the engineer gives plus 12% missile strength to the hero's army, and then you also have the restock ability. Warrior priests, for instance, provide replenishment to the army. They're quite good to defend your troops and make them fight for a longer time. So just ensure that you fit in the specific heroes with your playstyle for the specific army that you're fielding, okay? And here we have the red line skills for the Empire units. As mentioned, you can have quite some nice combinations, spending like average amount of skill points for them, so it does allow some nice variety in your armies. I'll try to focus on that in just a few moments to give you some good alternatives for your armies. Just a note that greatswords are still in honest steel, so if you go for greatswords, it's nice to go for demigryphs as well, and that becomes a really powerful melee force. But by all means, you can use other combinations as well, and mainly the last one for you can either choose between Mighty Forge or Imperial Gunnery. I like to choose between those two, and then maybe have some other units. So, as you can see, the armies that I'm considering here for Elspeth, you can trade off if you prefer the Hellstorm rocket batteries. You can trade those land ships and steam tanks. By the way, in these army compositions, and the amount of skill points, it's basically the same. The yellow number there, it's the amount of red line skills that you need to fully buff the army above, by the way. So combinations of the new armies. I just wanted the second army, for instance, to be only new units. That's why, but you can definitely use some demigryphs, like if you prefer, instead of the Knights of the Black Rose. But very, very nice. The specific lesser upkeep for anything that has a gun. It's really nice as well to have. And don't be afraid of using those amethyst units as frontline, because they definitely can do it, especially under Elspeth, which is such a nice thing to see when a hybrid unit actually is hybrid, actually can do both the jobs. Now, template for the General of the Empire. I now have a template, by the way, for you guys to use if you prefer. And in essence, because of that charge speed for cavalry units, I thought, well, why not having a fully cavalry army? So, of course, you can have these sort of, it's not a meme army, but still an idea for these guys, just to ensure that you have a very mobile army, maybe a very good reinforcing army. So that's the sort of idea that I want there. The Arc Collector only has the Righteous Fury, improving flagellants, not the best unit, but of course you can theme around it if you would prefer. Just make sure that you are not fighting, the main enemy stacks. Overall, just having some good units. In terms of the Arc Collector, front line is going to be improved because you will be there with your auras to protect them. So that's why you can have, a little bit more focus on melee if you prefer. Now, in terms of the Master Engineer, so he's quite good as well. He has some good abilities for the Empire Artillery or War Machine units. So, of course, focusing a little bit on those. As you can see, the second army is just melee plus those artillery units, which is great, but the first army still can provide some good cover for those demigryphs with the great swords. Use the steam tanks and land ships as melee units. You can kind of consider them in this patch, actually. Hopefully nothing changes, because I really love that change. And of course, if you wish to shun completely the guns, you can use some Huntsman General with some Huntsmen, of course, and quite a mobility army if you prefer. And it's always nice that they don't cost too many in terms of redline skills. That's the important aspect here. Of course, I've added, some Outriders there, but by all means, you can add some land ships, you can add some artillery if you wish. This is just to keep it thematic and keep it a little bit different. So Elspeth has really improved the Empire missile focus to make them one of the, if not the best at it. Tons of variety and a lot of improvements throughout the campaign will make sure you will always want to fight another battle, just to check out the new improvements. Amethyst units are excellent to bring swift purple rain against your enemies, and quite thematic as well. Now be careful with line of sight situations, but otherwise you should just have some fun with guns, guns, guns. That's what you should be aiming for. Now, in terms of your army, it has now slightly changed, so it consists of good infantry, so the elect account units being accessible improve this enough. Great missiles and artillery, great cavalry, good single entities now. Finally, they have great single entities, actually good single entities, let's put it good. And they lack flyers. Other than Lords and Heroes, that's the only, let's say, weakness that I would put on the Empire. Replenishment is decent, especially with the warrior priests, but the climate is terrible. If you're expanding away from the Empire lands, it's not an easy campaign to achieve domination with, so just make sure you keep replenishing your forces, keep using that encamp status before continuing conquests. So time for some purple rain with Elspeth von Draken of the Empire.